The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
The National Alliance for Youth Sports was born out of a desire to bring order to the world of organized sports for children in America. While for the most part, children have a great experience playing sports, far too often parents and coaches lose perspective.
I'm gonna get you tonight because you let me down, brother.
No, I'm not.
You did. I'll get you, buddy. Cry about that.
This program is aimed at bringing some of America's best experts to talk about what we can do to change the atmosphere of win at all cost and parent poor behavior to one that focuses on children having a positive learning experience through sports. Here's our host, Fred Eng, the founder of the National Alliance for Youth Sports.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to, I think now, the 17th edition of Why Johnny Hates Sports, and proud to present today the pride of Greenville, South Carolina Recreation Department, Rich Dixon. So, good morning, Rich.
Good morning. Thank you for having me, Fred.
Oh, yeah, man, it's great to have you. You've been a stalwart in the world of the National Alliance for Youth Sports, certified youth sport administrators. I know that for a few years now. And, you know, Rich, people that watch this show, and by the way, this goes out to 12,500 of people like yourself across the country. So, but there are other people that watch and say, well, what does a recreation department person do? So can you tell us what it's like there in Greenville and your role?
Okay. I think from the kind of community perspective, I think the local Parks and Rec department kind of set the expected standards in youth sport for our area, kind of realizing that each community is unique and different. And as far as, you know, we're set up in Greenville County, is we work with a lot of partnerships and to help provide youth sports programs in the community. And so we, you know, we'll work with local Little League, soccer clubs, lacrosse clubs, you name it, hockey clubs. And so a lot of times we do the field providing, and we try to set those standards when it comes to expectations for coaches certifications, background checks, and, you know, kind of expectations with, you know, weather and abuse prevention and different things like that. But I think it's a vital part of each community and Parks Rec department to set that tone for their community.
Yeah. One of the things that we've done, Rich, for the last several episodes is talk about travel ball and how travel ball is affecting those facilities and programs in communities. Let me show you with our engineer to show a video that we do about travel teams today.
It all started over 70 years ago. Kids played for fun in their neighborhood. Then things changed. Recreation departments were created across America to provide fields for organized sports programs organized by parents. Millions of children joined Little League kinds of programs for all sports. Little League sports became a household word. And then came travel teams. Self-described professional coaches began offering opportunities for kids to join elite teams for travel around the country to play in tournaments. According to many recreation leaders, travel teams are distorting recreational ball by siphoning talent, increasing financial and time burdens, and shifting focus from community fun to elite competition.
So, Rich, you just watched that. How does that compare to anything in Greenville?
I think I think we kind of have a cross section in our community that, I think there's a place for travel ball, but for us, I think what we've seen, I guess, kind of the evolution of youth sports in our area is travel ball's kind of become less of the travel side, where it's kind of more become localized and maybe not as much elite. I think there's a lot of that still there. But for us, what travel has kind of become is almost, it's the next level, but we have found groups that have, like with Little League, that may have, travel teams that come out of their league. And so they may, share within the Little League, they may work out a schedule to allow that to happen. And a lot of times where you're not seeing kids travel quite so far, it's not traveling 3 or 4 hours away the full weekend. It may just be we're traveling within an hour of where you live, and then you go and can stay at you can commute and go to the tournaments. So we have seen kind of the hybrid model come into play for some of our independent little leagues and stuff, where they allow that to happen. And then, of course, with soccer, you have different levels in our community with that, where some may be traveling all over the country, and then kind of a unique perspective that I have is my son actually plays wheelchair basketball. We play with the National Wheelchair Basketball Association. We're the only youth wheelchair basketball team in the country, and excuse me, in the state. There's probably 40 or 50 in our age group across the country, but because it's such a unique kind of demographic with the youth, you have to travel to play your rec ball per se. From that perspective, we do have to travel. We do have to get the hotel and stuff, but that's just to allow our kids with, disabilities and stuff, lower limb disability, usually what wheelchair basketball. So we have to travel to find other teams to play. And, but for us, I think the hybrid model has kind of taken hold here locally. And it does take some away from the Parks and Rec or the rec perspective, but I think the hybrid model allows the continuity to stay a little bit with the little leagues and the rec side of things. And then also you have the argument or the perspective of, where you do too much specialization within a specific sport, doing the year-round travel, where we do see that burnout that does happen, where kids are, playing baseball 24/7, going to training and going to travel, playing on elite teams, and they're missing out on the variety and balance of, the data shows that playing in other sports actually helps the long-term athlete, both mentally and physically.
Yeah, one of the things I've heard from so many people like yourself in recreation is the big problem is that when they have travel teams, it takes away the facilities. I mean, if you look back at recreation, and I've been involved in recreation for years before the National Alliance for Youth Sports, that is, but one of the things that was available is recreation departments in communities. They built facilities originally for baseball. So you have baseball fields all over the place, and then it came football and soccer fields and whatever. But then what I hear is with the travel teams that come in and they go to the rec departments and say, well, we'd like to lease your facility over there for, let's say, baseball. That may not happen in Greenville, but it's happening around the country. And they pay money because the parents are paying. Is one parent told me that they're paying like $15,000 a year for their kid to play in a baseball program that is travel team. So I mean, it just destroys the good opportunity for just the regular kids in community that may not have the funds to do that, to find a facility to play, the leagues to come out and get formed. What do you think of that? Is it like that? Have any facilities in Greenville been taken away from those leagues by travel teams?
I would say not as a big an impact as it is seen in other parts of the country. We are blessed that we have, close to 55 parks and facilities, and I will say that the little leagues we provide the field for. We allow them, at least during the season, like February through June, and then August through early November, when their seasons usually run. The travel teams that are connected through them, we allow them to work with those teams that are in-house or that are made up of Little League players. We do have enough space that we can offer some additional, we don't necessarily do long-term lease, but where someone can come in and rent a field for a period of time. But we do give priority to the local Little Leagues because they serve thousands of kids in the community. And so we try to prioritize those fields, those facilities during those key times of the year. To the groups, to our Little League affiliated groups that are partners with us.
I read recently that with Little League, that participation is down significantly. Give you an example. It said that before, like back in 2010, there were 3 million kids playing Little League baseball. Today, there are 2 million playing. And what do you attribute that to? Is it like that in Greenville, or is it the same as it always been?
I would say there's been definitely a slight decrease across the board with baseball. Not a significant decrease, but I think across the board we have seen that.
Why is that?
I think first off is I think it's something we've even seen in adult sports where softball, baseball kind of transitions to softball as adults. I think first off is the variety of sports that are offered nowadays with the soccer clubs, lacrosse coming on the scene in recent years. We even have kids playing, getting into rugby, a little bit, not real big, but, so I think you see, compared to 20 years ago or even 10 years ago, that the kids are so spread thin with doing multiple sports at one time or other commitments. And then I do think you do see a shift. There's probably a portion of the kids going straight to travel ball. It's not a rec ball first, travel second. It may be where they're playing a full year schedule or a full spring schedule with travel ball versus the recreational side like Little League.
So Rick, a rec department person like you, Rich, I often ask rec people, you're dealing with, ultimately, you look out there in Greenville and there are thousands of kids in that community, and I know how it's growing and growing. So as a rec person, how do you compare yourself to a classroom teacher? do you feel like your important role is developing kids through your programs there in Greenville the same as classroom teachers?
I think from the way we're structured, I think the big focus of ours, we are probably more of, you know, training the coaches and setting those standards, making sure that it's a kids first mentality and that their safety and well-being is, is first and foremost the priority. And then I think as Parks and Rec in general, I think it's our job to instill those values and those, positive values in youth sports, and the foundation is important that we kind of establish that in our communities and to our coaches, and then it trickles down through the associations and our little leagues as well.
I can't believe that your department there couldn't be very similar to so many, where the reason I wrote the book, Why Johnny Hates Sports, is, kids don't hate sports, but what happens is you get a kid that's 5 years old and the parent says, okay, you're going to play Little League. Well, they don't know whether the kid can catch and throw and kick and hit or whatever basic athletic skills you need. They just thrust them out in the field. And so the kid, in many, many cases, gets frustrated and doesn't like it. And then you get, like you mentioned, you need to be training these coaches. Well, yourself, they're not coaches. They're parents who have been made to play a role as a coach, and they really don't know what they're doing most of the time. So you're doing all that, but as a person, ultimately responsible for what happens to Billy that's out there playing, or married, playing whatever. What responsibility do you think recreation people have to make sure that's positive and safe?
I think it's our, first and foremost responsibility. If we were more hands-on with like recruiting the coaches and putting together the teams, and you see a lot of times the parents, they maybe played football, played baseball, but they've never been a coach, and a lot of their behaviors are mimicked from what they experienced growing up in youth sports, and a lot of them are bad habits and negative feedback. When a player is being coached and stuff, so we got to equip them with the proper tools and the proper methods, and help them learn the sport as well. The foundational stuff.
But that doesn't mean, as we all know, when you give them that training, that they're going to turn into this wonderful person that you hope they would be. So I know you've got to tell me that you've seen situations. Can you tell me a situation where you found a coach that was a person that shouldn't be out there with kids?
Yes, I think over the years there's been several situations where you can hear coaches yelling at the kids. You can hear what they're saying 50 yards away, and belittling the kids, and ones that are arguing with the referees, or this constant negative personality and want to argue everything, and they're in the kid's face and yelling at them. We've had that, we have that, I think, just about everywhere in youth sports, unfortunately, but I have seen that over the years. And I even remember back early in my career where, we actually, it wasn't a coach, but it was why fences are important, but we actually had a parent that was putting you know, putting like money out if a kid got a touchdown or, you know, stuff like that to encourage, you know, encourage them during the game, and the coach went along with it and stuff like that. So, but there's a lot of, you know, negative behavior that we've seen over the years. But I would say the yelling, the negative tone and stuff towards the kids is a situation we see sometimes.
What do you do when you see it happen?
Probably follow up with, you know, if we try to stop it, if it gets out of hand, pull the coach aside. And it's hard too that we don't, you know, a lot of our partnerships, we rely on them. They're the ones handling the coaches and the situations. But, you know, in the situation, pull them aside, you know, try to correct the situation at the field. And then we would go back and do some, you know, follow up with the youth association and, or the Little League, and go with them, you know, go to them and, you know, work with them on the coach's behavior and try to correct it.
So here's a good question for you, Rich. If the Little Leagues are using your facility, right?
Yes.
They got to get a lease for it. All right. So now you find out that a Little League, and it has its own board and whatnot, and who reports that somebody is abusive? I mean, either physically or emotionally, or, you know, towards a kid. Do they report it to the Little League board, or do you hear about it?
We don't always hear about it being our structure. A lot of times they'll go to their Little League board to handle the situation. Sometimes if a parent feels like maybe they're not getting heard from the Little League or from the whatever board youth association is, they'll come to us, and then we will approach the board or the president and talk to them about the situation and see what's happening and see if we can assist them with the situation as well.
Here's a good question I need to ask you as somebody who's been around for a while. I've always had the impression that kids playing sports at below the age of 10 in particular isn't really needed, and it shouldn't be. And the reason being the early maturing situation where you've got a kid that could be, let's say, 7 years old, but maturing wise, he or she can be 4 years ahead of their time. And then you had the other side where somebody 7 can be 3 or 4 years under a late mature. So you have them out there playing in a competitive game. Does that seem crazy to you?
I think kids should be playing with their age group regardless of their skill level. You know, even though they might be advanced physically, even talent-wise, you know, mentally, they're still the age that they are. And we try to do, the one program we do provide a little structure to, and is youth football. And that's one that we're real careful that, you know, kids are playing with their age group and then not playing up, and A, for the safety of the contact reasons, and then B, just the skill level, you know. You know, if you have a kid that's, you know, maybe well gifted, you know, physically, but doesn't necessarily translate that it'll be a safe and positive environment for them if they play up, you know, in a more competitive environment.
Yeah, like I say, it just seems so unnatural to have a program you mentioned with football. So you have somebody that is 7 years old playing in a youth football program that is really an 11-year-old body wise. So where do you think the coach plays that kid? And so I know that some football programs and maybe the football groups in your community create rules for weight, that they're allowed to weigh a certain weight or they can't play a certain position. Do you find that in leagues there?
So kind of how we're structured, we kind of have a hybrid model that we have in-house. It has input from like American Youth Football, USA Football, a little bit of Pop Warner. And I guess we call it, they used to call it the striper rule, or we call it the 90 number rule. And so for each age group, we have a weight limit, and then we weigh them in at the beginning of each season. They have, one time to make weight, and that's their weight for the season. And then if they do not make weight, if they're over the weight limit, they wear a 90 number, and they are limited to the offense and defensive line. Regardless, there's no upper weight limit where they can't play. I know there's some models where, if you're too big, you can't play at all. And I think sometimes that, you may have a really big kid that needs the physical activity, and it would be beneficial. So we don't want to discourage a kid playing because of size. But what that does, anyway, puts them on a 90 number, and they play offensive, defensive line. They usually have to be down in a 3-point stance. And then they're, just because of contact and, full speed of the game of football, especially on kickoffs and returns and stuff like that, the 90 numbers are not allowed to play on the kickoffs and stuff like that. So that's kind of how we approach it. There used to be some limits of how many 90 numbers you could play out on the field at a time, and we've had variations over the years. But, we want all kids to play regardless of where they're at and their size, and, acknowledging that, hey, you don't make the weight limit, but we don't want to say you're too big to play at all. And I know and those models are good too. Like I said, it's for each community in each state, but that's kind of how we approach the football model with our program and the weight limit.
Yeah, and Rich, I tell the story talking about, again, I go back to the whole problem with youth football. I tell the story about a mother who went to go pick her child up. She told me this story. She had to go pick her child up for an appointment at a football practice. And when she got there, she couldn't find her son. So she looked around and asked the coach and said, Where's my son? He's not here. She said, he's over in the car over there. And she said, in the car? I said, yeah. So she ran over to the car, opened the door. This is at the summertime. The heat was on, turned up high, wrapped in plastic wrap. You know what the coach was doing, right, Rich?
Oh, yeah.
So what happened is that woman, rightfully so, got her kid out of the car and went over to the coach and screamed and said, I'm going to sue you for almost having killed my son. And the guy said, well, I was just trying to get him to make weight. And see, that's the mentality of youth football coaches so many times, that they don't think, they're only thinking about winning and winning at all costs. So I know as a rec person, it concerns you and every other rec person across the country. So What do you think about that story?
I mean, I think that's a story that it's all too familiar growing up being a football player. The old trash bags, running hills, and 20, 30 years ago, I mean, I played back in the early 90s, and that was kind of accepted. It was okay. And just think of how many injuries or potential death that may have overheating and could have been prevented over the years. It's a practice that's all too much accepted out there, I think, still, and that win at all costs should never jeopardize the safety and well-being of a player. And especially with so many studies out, I know with NAIDS Congress, we've I believe it was Corey Stringer's dad, or no, it wasn't Corey Stringer. You may
know who you're talking about.
Yeah, the Maryland football player. I draw a blank right now, and his organization has done a great job with awareness of, and I think helping communities purchase the supplies to, help combat overheating and educating coaches and stuff. And I think that mentality's what hurts youth sports, and even just
the thing is, it still goes on. You said back maybe in the 90s and whatnot. I can assure you the same thing is going on at the end of this summer when these coaches are out there. So what I want to do is I want to thank you, and along with all the other recreation professionals all across the country who look at these situations and try to create some avenue to put away with this kind of behavior, whether it's ending programs that violate it in any kind of way, because in the end, like I say, that's why Johnny hates sports. So again, Rich, I want to thank you very much for being here today, and good luck with everything you do in Greenville.
Thank you for having me. You have a great day.
All righty.
Why Johnny Hates Sports is a best-selling book about kids in sports. It chronicles why, at a very early age, children are thrust into organized sports long before they have the necessary skills to feel successful. Fathers and mothers are asked to be their coach without having any training on how to coach, and the leagues in which kids play are governed by volunteers whose main focus becomes scoreboards, championships, and all-star games. Statistics show that close to 70% of kids will have quit by the age of 13. Most said it ceased to be fun. And that's why Johnny Hates Sports.
Well, there you have it, folks, for this weekend. And I want to thank Rich again from Greenville, South Carolina, for being on the show today. We'll be back here again next Friday, and look forward to seeing you with us. Have a great weekend.
This program is sponsored by Sir Durf Publishing in the interest for better sports for kids, better kids for life.